Are you a young fur looking for advice about the furry fandom? Hi, my name is Bjorn Valentine and I hope you're having a dandy day. Today's video is all for you young furs looking for some tips about the furry fandom, or someone who doesn't know much about the fandom and wants to possibly gain some new information about the fandom. But these tips are more aimed towards the younger side of the furry fandom. By a young fur, I'd say the cutoff point is between the ages of 16 and 17 years old. At the age 16, depending on which state you live in, you may be able to get a tattoo, the age of consent, for most states at least, and begin learning how to drive starts between the ages 16 and 17 years of age. So this video is aimed towards anyone leading up to the ages 16 or 17 years old. Tip number 1. When it comes to being in the furry fandom, there's a misconception that you need to have a fursona to be in the furry fandom. Like you have to have a fursona like it's your own ID badge. When in the fandom, all that really matters is that you enjoy what the fandom has to offer and you enjoy the fandom's interests. Tip number 2. Art is possibly the driving force of the fandom. The appreciation of art that is made up of anthropomorphic animals. You too may have a strong passion for art, and from seeing all of these amazing artists in the fandom, you may want to be a part of that too. Try your best not to be discouraged by other artists and what they're capable of. Artists, video makers, fursuit makers, for example, spend years of making their craft to be able to do what they're doing today, putting their blood, sweat, and tears into their work. So if you want to get good at art, simply constantly practice and draw what you love or make whatever content you love. Tip number 3. This somewhat coexists with tip number 2, but this needs to be said. It is fine to draw inspiration from other artists, but don't rip off or straight up copy the artist's work. As I said before, art is possibly the driving force of the fandom. So stealing other artists' work by possibly tracing their work is a big no-no in the fandom. Most, if not all people in the fandom will not want to associate themselves with people who steal other people's work. Tip number 4. The furry fandom is more than anything just a hobby. Yes, for some people it could truly become a lifestyle. But first and foremost, the fandom is a hobby. There are many things in the fandom that draw your attention that you feel inclined to spend for like a fat wad of cash onto. But seriously, consider your life and what's going on around you before you drop that fat stack of cash on art or a fursuit. Your life comes first before the furry fandom. Tip number 5. The furry fandom, like I said before, is a hobby, and therefore should be something you shouldn't be ashamed of. But I would also like to add, you do not have to tell everyone that you're part of the fandom. It's your hobby. You don't have to tell people that it's an interest of yours. You are allowed to keep it your own private hobby to enjoy. A lot of people unfortunately tend to compare telling somebody that they're furry as a coming out story, which in my opinion is extremely rude to those who have had horrible experiences coming out as LGBTQ to their families. If you want to tell people about it, sure, go ahead. It's your life. But please don't correlate it to a coming out situation. If you choose to tell somebody about the fandom, you could simply bring up the good points about the fandom if you really feel that nervous about it, such as the charity work that many incredible furs choose to do, or the huge donations that come from furry conventions. There's plenty to show about the fandom that may shed some good light to those who aren't sure about the fandom. Tip number 6. Fursuits are a commodity, not a necessity. The first thing people think of when they hear about the furry fandom is fursuits. Even you, right now, hearing the word furry, you probably thought of fursuits. But just because fursuits are part of the fandom doesn't mean you have to own one. Plus, you might not even be done growing. The average for not growing anymore, height-wise, is usually 18 years of age. And being young and dropping major dough on a fursuit is a huge investment. If you want to make your own fursuit, that's your own thing for yourself to worry about. But commissioning someone for a fursuit when you're under the age of 18 is usually a no-go for most fursuit makers. By your age, you're more than likely not done growing, and you'll more than likely grow out of that amazing fursuit you dropped $900 plus just for a partial. So I would suggest alternatives to purchasing or attempt to purchase your own fursuit, such as making your own mask, or trying to purchase a mask at meets or conventions. Tip number 7. Going to local fur meets for the first time can be terrifying. I was 21 years plus of age when I went to my first fur meet, and I was absolutely terrified. I didn't know anyone, nor did I have the confidence to walk up to anyone. So you more than likely being at a younger age and watching this video, I'd highly recommend not going to a meet alone. Bring someone, anyone for the first meet. It keeps you safe and keeps you in a much safer mental space as well. Although you may have something in common with everyone there, that doesn't make them your friend. So be safe when you go to your first furry meet. Tip number 8. You may or may not have found out yet, but the furry fandom is mostly filled up of people who are mainly in the LGBTQ+ community. The fandom is filled with all walks of life. So try your best to be respectful to those you meet in the fandom. For example, when trying to get to know somebody at a meet or something such as that, ask about their pronouns. That's honestly a great way to start. It shows that you have respect for them and you want to take the chance to get to know them. Tip number 9. Don't be afraid to ask questions. The furry fandom is a broad spectrum of what a fandom could be. The fandom can be something for one person, but something completely different for someone else. So if you're curious about something in the fandom, be sure to ask in a respectful way and get their opinion on the subject you were curious about. Tip number 10. Possibly the most important tip I can give. Please, for your own protection, be careful with how much you let people into your personal life. Or simply be careful with how much information you share about yourself online. You don't know most of the people you're talking to online. And since the fandom mainly exists online more than anything, the amount of information you give about yourself is something you should always keep in mind before you say anything to anyone. Trust isn't something you should just give out willy-nilly. With this tip, you don't even really have to be a part of the fandom to have been told this, but it's something you should always keep in mind when you're on the internet. And since the fandom, like I said before, is mainly based on the internet, you seriously have to be wary about it. Well, those were my tips for you younger furs about the furry fandom. I hope you liked the video, and I hope you found some of the information today to be thought-provoking. I hope you have a dandy day, evening, and good night. See ya. Wow, you actually stayed. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to watch this whole video. It's been a while since my last video. Well, longer than 6 months, so thanks for coming to watch the video. It really means the world to me. And thank you, people on Patreon who've still stuck by to help me reach my level of content that I want to achieve with this channel. I still want to make content for this channel. I'm going to try to push myself real hard to get that content that you guys seem to enjoy. So thank you so much for being around. I love you all. I love this fandom. Thank you all so much. Have a dandy day, evening, and good night. See ya.